Ever wondered what it feels like to spend your entire life inches from fire, swinging a hammer until your spine gives out and your hands forget how to be hands? Good, because tonight, that's exactly what we're doing. We're not talking about the slow-motion, spark-showering, movie montage version of blacksmithing. No. Forget the romantic forge with dramatic lighting and emotionally complex sword-making. This is the real thing. Soot in your lungs, burns on your forearms, and a work schedule that laughs in the face of rest days. You're not a warrior. You're not a noble. You're not even allowed to be tired. You're a medieval blacksmith, and your reward for a lifetime of blistering labor is another lifetime of blistering labor. So get comfortable. If your back still allows that sort of luxury, dim the lights, let the crackle of imaginary fire fill your ears, and prepare to descend into the gloriously grim world of soot, steel, and generational trauma. And hey, before the hammer drops, go ahead to like the video and subscribe. Let's begin. Now, you wake up in heat. Not metaphorical heat. Not, ooh, it's a bit stuffy in here heat. Real, oppressive, sweat already dripping into your eyes before you sit up heat. It clings to your skin like a fever. The room smells like charcoal, smoke, and something vaguely meat adjacent, which is probably your own body cooking slowly from the inside out. This is not a bad day. This is every day. The forge has already been lit, probably by your father, probably before the sun bothered to show up. The glowing belly of the fire casts flickering shadows on the soot-stained walls like demons dancing in time with your anxiety. It's less rustic charm and more fire hazard that owns your soul. You roll off your straw mat with the kind of enthusiasm reserved for funeral guests and unpaid interns. Your feet hit the packed dirt floor. It's already warm. That's a good sign. Or a bad one. Hard to tell anymore. No one asks how you slept. No one cares. Sleep isn't sacred here. Work is. The forge doesn't rest, so why should you? You're not a person in this space. You're a moving part, a limb of something larger, a two-legged bellows, a hammer that sometimes breathes. The forge doesn't live in your house. You live in its. Everything revolves around it. Its needs, its noise, its moods. You learn to read the flames the way nobles read scripture. Is it roaring today? Is it sulking? Does it need more coal, or just a little praise and an animal sacrifice? You'll never know, but you'll try anyway. You're already covered in soot, even though you haven't touched anything yet. Your tunic, once vaguely beige, is now the colour of despair. You've worn it every day for 3 years. You don't remember what it originally smelled like. Now it smells like regret and burnt wool. You tie on your leather apron, stiff with old grease and stories no one asked for, and you're ready to begin. You were born into this. Literally. Your mother went into labour next to the forge. It was the only warm place in winter. You entered the world to the sound of a hammer striking iron, and your father muttering about wasted coal. Your first breath probably contained more ash than air. Congratulations, you were baptized in fire, whether you wanted to be or not. This is your inheritance, not a family crest, not a scroll of land titles, not even a rusty dagger, just fire, metal, and pain. Your first memory? The hiss of hot iron dropped into water, that screaming steam. Your second memory? Your own screaming, from sticking your hand into something you shouldn't have. It won't be the last time. Your childhood was measured in burn degrees and hammer sizes. Your crib was probably a coal bin. Your rattle a pair of tongs. You were soot-streaked before you could spell your own name. Not that spelling it was especially relevant in this life. Your father never says good morning. He says, pump the bellows. This is his love language. If he's particularly warm, he might grunt something like, don't mess it up today. That's practically a hug. He's a man forged by the same fire that feeds the forge. Hard, hot-tempered, and liable to explode without warning. He doesn't teach by talking. He teaches by expecting you not to die. The forge doesn't wait for you to wake up. It calls. It demands. It doesn't care if you're hungry, tired, or vaguely considering walking into the woods and never coming back. Iron is heating. Customers are coming. Something needs fixing, sharpening, bending, or reforging. And that someone, as always, is you. The bellows are your first task. They're enormous, ancient, possibly possessed. They creak like dying whales and leak air in all the wrong places. You pump them rhythmically, arms already aching, lungs full of yesterday's smoke. The fire responds, flickering brighter like a beast stirred from slumber. Great. You've just woken the dragon. You don't work next to the forge. You serve it. It's not a tool. It's a god. A loud, temperamental, blister-happy deity that demands your full attention. You don't command the fire. You plead with it, appease it, try to keep it from destroying everything around you. The moment you act like you're in control, it reminds you otherwise. The walls are coated in a permanent layer of soot. So are your lungs. So is your future. There's no ventilation system, unless you count hole in the roof. It lets in a little light, a little air, and a lot of bird poop. Still, it's the closest thing you have to a window. Sometimes you look up and see the sky, and for a moment, you remember there's a world out there. Then the fire crackles, and you return to the cave. The rhythm sets in quickly. Heat, pump, swing, shape. Heat, pump, swing, shape. It's like dancing with a hammer while slowly catching fire. You're trying to turn red-hot iron into something useful while slowly melting from the inside. But when it works, when that horseshoe bends just right, or the blade shines just so, you feel something. Not joy. That's too generous. More like a grim, quiet satisfaction. The kind you get from surviving another hour without third-degree burns. Or maybe from doing something that'll last longer than you will. Either way, you nod to yourself and move on. No time to celebrate. The next piece is already waiting. You're hungry. But not now. Not while the fire's roaring. Not while iron's glowing. You eat when it lets you. Cold bread, some half-boiled vegetable thing, maybe a little cheese if someone in the village actually paid you this week. You chew fast, swallow faster, keep working. There's no such thing as clocking out. Your day ends when your arms give out, or the fire dies, whichever happens first. And if you're lucky, the fire dies after your arms. If not, your father will tell you to swing lighter, which is like telling a drowning man to breathe slower. You don't really have a name anymore. You're just the blacksmith's boy, or the lad with the hammer, or you there, fix this. You don't go to festivals. You don't chase girls. You don't have hobbies. You have a forge. You have burns. You have bills. You exist in heat and hammer blows, defined entirely by utility. And yet, there's a strange comfort to it, a predictability. The forge doesn't lie. It doesn't flatter. It doesn't pretend to care. But when you strike iron, and it sings, when it bends beneath your hammer, when the spark flares just right, something deep in your chest flickers back. Pride, maybe, or just the illusion of purpose. You're not important, not in the way nobles are. No one will write poems about you, but when they need a hinge, a blade, a plough, or a dozen nails before sundown, they'll remember. They'll come running. They'll bring their broken tools, their cracked wheels, their just a quick fix requests. And you'll be here, right where you've always been, in the heat, in the fire, swinging, sweating, swearing, not because you love it, but because someone has to keep the world from falling apart. And lucky you, the hammer fits your hand. And just when you think you've gotten used to the rhythm of the flames and the screaming metal, you remember. This life didn't start today. It started the moment you were born into soot, sweat, and low expectations. So let's wind the clock back, right to the blackened cradle of your childhood. You don't remember the first time you saw the forge, because you never didn't see it. It was always there, glowing in the background of your life like an ever-present second son that hated you personally. Other children had lullabies and blankets. You had furnace cough and soot in your crib. There was no gentle introduction. No, "One day, son, this will all be yours" speech. The forge wasn't offered to you. It consumed you. You weren't guided toward your destiny. You were shoved into it, face first, holding a bucket almost as big as you. By the age of 4, you knew 2 things for certain. Don't touch the red stuff, and your father's eyebrows used to be much thicker before the fire claimed them. You also learned that helping meant anything between coal fetching and not actively dying near hot metal. At 6, you were officially named an apprentice, which is a fancy way of saying small soot-covered goblin who does everything and gets yelled at for free. No ceremony, no celebration, just your father throwing you a pair of tongs, pointing at something glowing, and saying, "Hold that." If you cried, you weren't ready. If you dropped it, you weren't his son. If you managed to survive without setting your tunic on fire, congratulations. You're hired. You thought apprenticeship meant learning a trade, maybe some mentoring, maybe a moment of pride. What it actually meant was being too short for the bellows, but expected to work them anyway. Spending entire days sweeping a dirt floor that never stayed clean, holding nails still while someone twice your size hits them with a hammer, and then getting blamed when your fingers got in the way. Your reward? A nod. Maybe. If your work was almost acceptable, or a grunt. That meant you didn't screw up badly enough to shame the family name. You wore that grunt like a medal, even though you couldn't tell if it meant well done or get out of the way. The other village children didn't understand. They played in fields, climbed trees, threw sticks at goats. You threw sticks into the fire and watched them curl and scream like you felt on the inside. They had wooden swords and toy carts. You had a hammer handle your size, and a forge that growled when you got too close. Their skin smelled like grass, bread, and goat. Yours smelled like ash, grease, and mild trauma. They built little mud forts and pretended to be knights. You built calluses and tried not to scream when your palm blistered again. They asked what you wanted to be when you grew up. You already were what you were going to be. 6 years old and already stuck in Destiny's apron pocket. Your toys were tools. Your playpen was a danger zone. The only game you played was guess how hot this iron is with your face. Your father didn't believe in softness, or days off, or praise longer than a grunt. He taught by doing, and by occasionally doing things at you. You learned to watch, copy, absorb, and when you failed, which you did, constantly, he didn't explain what you did wrong. He just stared at you like you were the reason the forge was grumpy that day. One time, you dropped a glowing rod into the water too fast and splashed steam in his face. He didn't yell. He didn't move. He just looked at you like you were a stray dog that ate the meat meant for supper. Then he handed you a shovel and said, "Start over." You worked for food. Not payment, not praise, not love exactly. Just survival. And even the food was conditional. If you finished your chores, if the fire behaved, if the customers didn't argue over prices again, your meals were fast, eaten standing, sometimes while still holding tools in one hand. Your fingers were often too sore to hold a spoon properly. You got used to it. That was the worst part. You started waking up before being told. You stopped flinching when the sparks hit your arms. You knew which parts of the anvil bit back. You learned to listen for the subtle hiss of cooling metal, not because it was beautiful, but because it meant you could rest for half a second without being shouted at. And despite all this, you started to love it. Not in a wholesome fairy tale family business way, more like a hostage developing feelings for their kidnapper. You knew the rhythm, knew the tools, knew the fire's moods better than your own. When you made something, even a rough little horseshoe, and it didn't fall apart. You felt something rare, something dangerous, pride. That was quickly stomped out. The moment you smiled at your work, your father would inspect it, frown, and say, "It's crooked." Then he'd throw it in the scrap pile without another word. That was lesson number 47 in your apprenticeship. Never get attached to your own success. The forge doesn't care. Neither does the village. You weren't special. You were useful. That's it. You were the kid who held the hot things, who carried buckets, who knew how to keep a fire burning even during a storm. If the village needed a hinge fixed or a tool straightened, they didn't ask if you were too young. They just asked when it'd be done. You remember your 7th birthday because your hands bled less that day. You'd finally learned how to grip the hammer without pinching your fingers. Your arms were steadier. Your burns were healing faster. You thought maybe your father would notice. Maybe he'd say something. Instead, he handed you a rusted plough blade and said, "Fix it, before noon." And you did. You started speaking less, thinking less, feeling less. Not because you were cold, but because warmth belonged to the fire now. Your emotions didn't help the forge. Only your hands did. Only your ability to endure, swing, pump, hold, lift, survive. That's what made you valuable. You stopped dreaming. Sleep was just maintenance. No fantasies, no future, just blackness until the next day started, identical to the one before. Your mother? She was quieter than the forge. She'd patch your tunic, bring you bread. Watch from the doorway while you sweated beside your father. Once she tried to rub ointment on a burn. Your father saw it and muttered, "He won't learn that way." She stopped after that. Sometimes you looked at her and wondered if she ever wanted something different. A cleaner life. A son with soft hands. But then you remembered. She married a blacksmith. She chose the fire, just like you will. Or rather, just like you already have. You didn't choose this life. You inherited it like bad knees and a family curse. But slowly, painfully, it started to fit. Like a boot you had to break in by bleeding inside of it. Like a name spoken over and over until it became your own. You were no longer just a child. You were part of the forge. And the forge never lets go. By now, you've been officially drafted into the family fire pit. But don't worry, you're not going into battle unarmed. You've got tools, glorious, unforgiving, finger-mangling tools. Let's meet your new best friends and sworn enemies. You don't remember the first time you picked up a tool. You only remember the first time one bit you. It was a pair of tongs, rusty, angry, and far too big for your child-sized, coal-blackened hands. You tried to lift a glowing rod. The rod slipped. The tongs slipped. Your fingertips caught the brunt. Skin met metal. Metal didn't care. You screamed. The tongs clamped harder. Lesson learned. Your tools are not your friends. They're co-workers. Violent, unpredictable ones, each with its own quirks, grudges, and deeply personal vendettas. They don't just make your job harder. They shape your body, rearrange your bones, and leave souvenirs in the form of cuts, bruises, and burns that don't quite fade. First up, the hammer. Your hammer isn't just a tool. It's an extension of your will, your body, and occasionally your rage. It has no name, but you've whispered curses at it like it's an old rival. You've used it so often, your shoulder clicks when you lift it, like a maraca filled with regret. Without it, you're a boy in an apron. With it, you're a blacksmith. You've had the same one for years. The head is chipped. The handle is cracked and bound in layers of sweaty cloth and dried blood that probably isn't all yours. It fits your grip perfectly, which is unfortunate because it also fits perfectly into your shin when you drop it, which happens more than you'd admit. The hammer teaches discipline, mostly through blunt force trauma. Then there's your tongs, the worst co-workers imaginable. They have one job, hold hot things, and they fail at it daily. The iron slips, the grip loosens, they pinch your fingers, burn your knuckles, and they always do this when someone important is watching. You once called them unreliable, and your father just grunted and said, "No, they're honest. You're unreliable." Your tongs are like angry crabs with heat stroke. You hate them. You need them. A perfect relationship. Now let's talk about the anvil. Not a tool, technically. More of a silent god. A black slab of unforgiving iron that eats whatever you drop on it and hums with ancient judgment. You don't move it. It moves you. Its surface is always either too hot, too sharp, or too full of glowing metal shrapnel that flies directly into your eyes at least twice a day. You've lost more fingernails to the anvil than you ever had a chance to name. It's not just heavy, it's eternal. You've bled on it, burned on it, fallen asleep on it. Once, in winter, your skin froze to it. You lost a patch of cheek and a decent amount of dignity. Your father just said, "You'll remember not to lean next time." And you did. Mostly. Files, chisels, punches, awls. Sounds like a weapon inventory. Feels like one too. Except every weapon is turned against you. Files slip and eat your knuckles. Chisels shatter and catch your palm mid-swing. The awl is a deceptively innocent-looking spike that has more than once attempted to stab you to death when left in a pocket. Each one is supposed to help shape metal. What they actually shape is your pain tolerance. Your chisel, in particular, hates you. It used to be sharp. Now it's mostly a shiny wedge, with dreams of stabbing your thigh when you forget where you put it. You keep sharpening it. It keeps slipping anyway. You once used it to open a jammed door and bent it permanently. It's never forgiven you. You own a rivet set, which sounds fancy, but is just another collection of medieval gremlins disguised as tools. Nothing quite like smashing your thumb flat while trying to drive a rivet through a stubborn iron plate. You didn't even curse that time. You just inhaled, walked out, screamed into a sack of coal, and came back. The bellows deserve a chapter of their own. But for now, let's just say this. They are ancient, wooden lungs filled with disappointment and smoke. They leak. They groan. They squeal like dying pigs when pumped too fast. But you have to keep them going. No bellows, no fire, no fire, no job, no job, no food. Sometimes you pump them with one arm while shaping metal with the other. That's when your spine joins the rebellion. Your grinding stone is a wheel of stone hell. It spins fast. It sings like a banshee. It flings sparks directly at your eyes, no matter which direction you're facing. You've worn down more skin than blade on it. If you forget to dampen the wheel, congratulations. Now your entire workshop smells like burning sadness. Your apron is not protection. It is fabric-based denial. It's leather. It's stiff. It's covered in scorch marks and the faint scent of something that died near it last spring. It catches hot slag like it's doing you a favour and then holds it against your stomach for extra pain. If you're lucky, the burns stay small. If not, your shirt fuses to your skin and becomes part of your personality. Every tool leaves a mark. Not metaphorically. Literally. Your fingers have more scars than fingerprints. Your palms are textured like burnt tree bark. You once tried to count the number of times you've bled in a single week. You ran out of numbers and bandages, so now you just shrug, wrap it in soot-stained cloth, and keep working. You've lost nails, split calluses, torn blisters. One time you crushed a knuckle so badly your hand swelled up like a boiled onion. Your father looked at it, nodded, and handed you a smaller hammer. "Use your other hand," he said, "because that's what tools teach you. There's always another way to hurt yourself." You develop a weird affection for them, not love, but a kind of hostile camaraderie. You line them up every night, clean them, oil the hinges. You talk to them sometimes. You threaten to throw them into the fire. They never respond, of course, except when they do, usually by falling off a shelf and landing on your foot. And the worst part, you'd be nothing without them. Your hammer gives you purpose. Your tongs give you precision. Your chisel, when it's not trying to kill you, gives you detail. They betray you, injure you, humiliate you, but they also turn shapeless fire into form. They make the world work. They make you work. Because in your world, tools aren't optional. They're survival. No tool, no work. No work, no coin. No coin, no bread. You care for them, not because they care back, but because they're the only things standing between you and total ruin. They're like angry gods, sacrificial, demanding, unforgiving, but absolutely necessary. Your father once said, "You know you're a smith when the tools hate you less than you hate yourself." You didn't understand that as a child. You do now. The blisters, the bruises, the bleeding, that's all part of the deal. The pain isn't punishment, it's currency. It means you're doing it right. You swing the hammer swings back, and that's how you know you're home. Once you've been impaled, scorched, and pinched enough times to know each tool by pain profile, you start to notice the background music of your life. It's not silence, it's not peace. It's a symphony of clangs, hisses, grunts, and smoke. Welcome to your personal iron opera. The forge doesn't speak, it screams. It sings in steel and roars in fire. Every second you're awake, your world is filled with the same violent orchestra, clangs, hisses, creaks, groans, and the soft, simmering sound of your sanity slowly evaporating. Your ears ring constantly, not like an occasional high-pitched whistle. More like a church bell is lodged in your skull, and someone keeps politely striking it with a horse. The hammer hitting iron is the main percussion section. Every blow is a crack that echoes off the walls and rattles your bones like dice. Sometimes the metal rings beautifully. Other times it lets out a flat, disappointing thunk, like it's personally offended by your technique. The anvil adds backup vocals. When the iron hits just right, it sings, sharp and shrill, like a choir of angry gods screaming through steel lungs. You've come to recognize the notes. Success, failure, too soft, too cold, and your fault. Then there's the fire. The fire never shuts up. It hisses, pops, spits, and growls depending on its mood and the quality of coal you've scrounged this week. It doesn't warm you. It assaults you, like standing in front of an angry dragon with halitosis made of ash and judgment. The bellows wheeze behind you. Big, wooden lungs that sound like they're dying of consumption, but still somehow demand attention. You pump them, and they respond by moaning in protest and coughing hot air into the forge, like a cranky elder forced to climb stairs. The smoke joins in. It drifts through the air like a drunken ghost, clinging to your clothes, your lungs, your future. You breathe it in. Not because you want to, but because there's no alternative. Clean air is a memory now, a vague rumour, a story your grandfather once told between coughing fits. Everything smells like fire. Not a pleasant campfire kind of fire. This is industrial fire. Choke on it fire. It smells like burning meat, scorched stone, and whatever part of your boot just melted when you stood in the wrong place again. You've stopped trying to wash the smell off. You can't. It's under your skin now. Even your sweat has given up. It doesn't smell like effort. It smells like a dying furnace trying to leave a will. Your clothes are soaked and stiff by noon. By sunset, they're hard enough to stand on their own and silently judge your life choices. The walls of the forge echo everything. There's no silence here. Even when you're alone, there's always something. A drip from the roof, the creak of timber, the settling groan of the anvil shifting in its sleep. You've learned to hear problems in the smallest sounds. A hiss that's too high, a clink that's too soft, a silence that's too long. Because sometimes silence means something went wrong, like the fire died, or a tool broke, or someone standing behind you holding something bent and expensive and looking at you like you did it on purpose. That kind of silence. That's worse than the clanging. It means more work is coming, and probably less sleep. There's rhythm to all of it. Not music exactly, more like war drums played by exhausted giants. Heat, swing, clang, hiss. Heat, swing, clang, hiss. Over and over, until the movements become muscle memory and your brain can focus on other things, like pain, or which of your toes still work. You don't hear the noise anymore, you feel it. It vibrates through your boots, creeps up your legs, lodges in your spine. By the end of the day, your body is still moving like you're at the forge, swinging, lifting, ducking, flinching at sounds that aren't even happening. You sleep to the rhythm. You wake up in tempo. And heaven help you if you spend a day away from the forge. The quiet is unbearable. It's wrong. You find yourself twitching at the absence of clangs. Your ears ring louder without the real noise to drown it out. You start humming the sound of the hammer just to feel normal. People stare. You don't care. You miss the chaos. Some days the fire gets angry. It flares higher than usual, spits sparks like accusations. You know it's your fault. Too much coal, wrong angle, bad timing. The heat rises so fast you feel your eyebrows crisp. The air turns thick. Breathing feels like sipping soup through a straw. But you keep working. You always keep working. Because the forge doesn't care if your skin is burning or your vision is going fuzzy. The iron is hot now, and it won't stay hot. You've got seconds before it goes soft and sullen again. So you swing. You swing like your life depends on it. Because in some ways, it does. There's no relief, no fan, no break room, just sweat-soaked linen and a bucket of water you pretend is for drinking and not just for hand-dowsing emergencies. And yes, sometimes that bucket is for you. You've dunked your entire arm in it before. Once, your whole head. It felt like baptism. The water turned grey. You turned red. Your father shook his head and said, "Should have worn your gloves." You laughed. He didn't. He never does. The smells change throughout the day. Morning smells like last night's ash and damp coal. Midday smells like metal, sweat, and barely cooked bread. Evening smells like exhaustion, charred splinters, and faint despair. It all clings to you. Your hair, your nails, your soul. You could bathe in rosewater and you'd still smell like burnt fence post. And let's not forget the accidents, the times when the hammer misses. The tongs slip, the iron bounces, the nail flies off and ricochets into your chest, with the kind of force usually reserved for battlefield arrows. You make a noise that isn't human. You clutch your side. Your father asks if you broke the nail. Not your ribs. The nail. You learn to listen to the metal. It talks back, tells you when it's ready, when it's brittle, when it's too cold to be bent and too hot to be trusted. It hisses like a snake and sings like an angel with a sore throat. You don't need a clock. You don't need a calendar. You just need the sound of the forge. It is time. It is the calendar. You know the season by how long the fire takes to warm up. You know the time of day by the pitch of the hammer. You know the weather by how loud the walls creak. And you know it's dinner when the clanging starts to sound like a lullaby, and your arms can't lift anymore. And yet, despite it all, you miss the noise when it's gone. You lie in bed and your brain plays it on repeat. The hiss of steam, the clang of iron, the dull thud of tools hitting the floor. You dream in sound. Nightmares where the fire goes out, or worse, where the silence means your hands have stopped moving altogether. Because in the forge, sound means life. Painful, deafening, soul-crushing life. But life nonetheless. And without it, you'd be lost, drifting in a quiet world where nothing needs fixing, nothing rings, and nothing burns. You wouldn't know who you were, because you are not just the one who works in the forge. You are the forge, and you speak in clangs. The rhythm consumes you, but don't worry. There's still time for childhood joy. As long as your idea of fun includes handling molten metal and dodging swinging tools. Let's talk about what playtime looks like when your sandbox is a coal pile and your toys come with tetanus. You don't have a childhood. You have a work history. While the village children were busy chasing goats and inventing games with sticks and absolutely no long-term consequences, you were 6 years old and already knew 3 ways to burn your own hands with iron. One of them involved blinking at the wrong time. You hear the word play, and your brain short-circuits. Is that a tool? A disease? Some kind of upper-class snack? You don't play. You fetch. You carry. You scrape, scrub and sweat in places that haven't finished growing yet. You were born into work and baptized in hot metal. Childhood was skipped like a meal you didn't earn. Your playground is a soot-caked floor littered with discarded nails, broken tongs, and tools sharp enough to slice meat, which, coincidentally, your fingers resemble after a full day of holding horseshoes that won't cooperate. Your jungle gym? A rack of rusted iron rods leaning dangerously near the edge of collapse. One loose elbow and you're getting your first lesson in tetanus. Or your last. No slides, no swings. Just a blazing furnace that occasionally belches sparks in your direction like a fire demon trying to sneeze. You used to flinch. Now you just blink, wipe the ash out of your eyes, and mutter something your father would ground you for saying if he believed in that kind of parenting. You don't have toys. You have tongs. Your most treasured possession at age 7 is a bent hammerhead you secretly think looks like a dog. You named it once. Then your father used it to fix a wheel and tossed it into a bucket of water without looking. You didn't cry. You just accepted that nothing belongs to you, not even pretend dogs. When other children fall, they cry. When you fall, your father says, "Get up, the forge doesn't care," and hands you a heavier bucket. You learn to stop falling. Your friends, if they can be called that, have the carefree aroma of cheese, grass, and goat hair. You, meanwhile, smell like burnt leather and generational responsibility. They ask you to come throw rocks at a fence. You decline. Not because you don't want to, but because your wrists are still vibrating from anvil shock, and your shirt is literally smouldering. You envy their lives, even the manure-smeared parts. They'll grow up to be shepherds, farmers, cobbler apprentices maybe. Still hard lives, but with sunshine, with open fields, with the possibility of choice. You were locked into your fate before you lost your baby teeth, and possibly because you lost your baby teeth in a hammer accident. At 8, your hands are already calloused. Your back already knows what a knot feels like. You wake up tired, go to bed sore, and in between you get to stack coal, pump bellows, and smile politely while being handed broken objects by grown men who say, "Careful, it's sharp," after it's already cut you. Every adult assumes you know what you're doing, because you're the blacksmith's kid. You don't. You barely know how to spell your own name. But you're holding a red-hot poker, and no one's stopping you, so apparently this is fine. Your chores start at dawn and end when your fingers stop working. You pump the bellows, carry water, stack coal, clean tools, sweep the floor, though clean is a hilarious exaggeration. It's like trying to vacuum a volcano. You don't ask, "Can I go outside?" You ask, "How many nails do I need to finish before I'm allowed to eat something that isn't ash-flavoured?" On rare days off, if the forge isn't full, the rain doesn't ruin the coal, and nobody breaks anything, you might be allowed to sit. Not rest, just sit. On a barrel. For 10 minutes. Until your father remembers that the tongs need reorganising, or the horse next door threw a shoe. Again. Every small moment of freedom is conditional. Every sliver of ease is borrowed time. You tried once to carve a little figure out of wood during a quiet moment. Your father saw it, squinted, and said, Is that supposed to be a knight? You think knights build things? Then he tossed it into the fire. You didn't argue. You just nodded and started hammering nails again. Nails don't mock you. They just bend. You don't learn lessons like other kids. You learn them through burns, bruises, and the kind of physical comedy that would be funny if it weren't also medical. You know exactly how hot a poker can get by the colour. You know what third-degree burns smell like. You know the fastest way to cool your hand is a bucket of water and screaming. The forge is your teacher, and it teaches hard. Touch the wrong end of the tongs? Lesson. Walk barefoot near a fresh horseshoe? Lesson. Fall asleep standing? Big lesson. Involve fire every time. You don't need exams. You have scars. They're your grades. And so far, you're passing with the highest honours in pain management and not crying in front of Dad. You sometimes wonder what it's like to have a hobby, to like something just because. Not because it keeps your family fed, or because it's the only thing you've ever known. You don't paint. You don't carve. You don't sing. Unless groaning while lifting an anvil counts as singing, which in your case it does. You're 9 when you realise your arms are stronger than most grown men in the village. Not because of pride. You don't have time for pride. But because someone hands you a bucket and says, "You'll need help with that," and you lift it without blinking. Your reward? Another bucket. Your spine is learning things it shouldn't, like how to ache before you hit double digits. Your knees click when you crouch. Your shoulders pop like overripe fruit. You've twisted more joints than you've celebrated birthdays. You're developing what can only be described as prepubescent blacksmith posture. Straight backs are for people with options, and through it all, there's never a break from the expectations. You're expected to endure, to work, to hold your tools properly, to not cry when the hammer slips or your father mutters, "Soft hands make soft men." You've never had soft hands. You never will. Even when you were born, your fingers already smelled like ash and ambition. One time you saw a noble child riding past on a pony, wearing silk. You stared, not with envy, with confusion. What is that life? What does that feel like? To ride, to play, to own something that isn't covered in soot? It was like watching a myth trot by, looking smug and overfed. You, meanwhile, once ate dinner with pliers because you couldn't unclench your hands. You don't miss childhood. You never had it. You just miss the idea that you might have had one. That somewhere in another village, some kid is chasing ducks instead of cursing at iron. That somewhere, play is real, not just a word people use when they don't need to swing something sharp before breakfast. But then again, you are good at this. You can feel when the fire's right. You can shape a nail without looking. You know which part of the floor creaks, where the coal burns hottest, and how long to quench a blade so it doesn't warp. You're still a kid, but you're already useful. And that counts for something, because here, usefulness is identity, and play is just a story someone else gets to tell. Your childhood isn't just short, it's completely outsourced, and as you grow, things don't change. You don't play, you don't stop, you just swing, eat, and repeat. Let's take a look at your daily routine, if you can even call it that. There is no daily routine. There is only the loop. Wake, work, swing, burn, eat, maybe. Swing again. Repeat until your limbs start rebelling and your vision goes spotty. Then collapse for a few hours and do it all over again with a slightly worse attitude and 2 fewer working joints. Your day doesn't start with a sunrise. It starts with smoke. Thick, heavy, cough-it-out smoke rolling through your lungs before you've even fully stood up. You wake to the sound of the fire being coaxed back to life. Bellows groaning, your father muttering curses that double as breakfast prayers. Your first thought isn't, "What's for breakfast?" It's, "Is the anvil still hot from last night?" Spoiler, it is. The forge is already glowing, the air already stings, your shirt already sticks to your back, and the bread, it's already stale. which is convenient because it was born stale. You eat it while standing, chewing with the enthusiasm of a man reconsidering all his life choices and trying not to drop crumbs into the bucket of slag by your feet. No one asks if you slept well. No one cares if you dreamed. You don't dream anymore, not unless you count half-conscious hallucinations about folding hinges for eternity. You start with the bellows, because everything starts with the bellows, no matter what day it is or who's dying. Pump, breathe, pump again. Your arms burn before the forge does. That's the cue that things are back to normal. Then you swing. Iron doesn't care about your mood, or the weather, or the fact that your right wrist has started clicking like a haunted doorknob. It just sits there, glowing and smug, waiting to be shaped. And if you don't hit it right, if your timing is even slightly off, it punishes you with a sound that says, "Try again, idiot." You swing until the metal bends. You swing until your fingers go numb. You swing like it's a form of prayer. And maybe, in this world, it is. Then, somewhere between the third horseshoe and the 12th complaint from a local farmer about his funny-feeling plough, your stomach growls. You check the sun, or what little of it leaks through the smoke hole in the roof. Could be mid-morning. Could be late afternoon. Time's fake. The fire decides when you're allowed to eat. Lunch is cold pottage and bread that doubles as a blunt weapon. If there's meat in it, it's not from any animal you'd willingly identify. The stew's thick, grey, and tastes like warm disappointment. You eat it next to the anvil, eyes still on the iron. A customer could walk in at any moment and say something cursed like, "I'm in a bit of a rush." You chew quickly, carefully. You've bitten your own tongue too many times while trying to eat with one eye on the forge and the other on your father's eyebrow twitch, the universal sign that you're not working fast enough. No one waits for you to finish eating. That includes your food. If you're slow, it cools. If you're slower, your father eats it. You try sitting down once, just for a moment. A stolen pause between hammer swings. Your legs buckle weirdly. Your body doesn't trust stillness anymore. Your father sees you, doesn't yell, just says, "Breaks are for tools, and you're not a tool. Yet." So you get back up. You'd rather be a tool. Tools get hung up and left alone sometimes. Afternoons blur into more orders. More iron, more nails. You swear someone is breaking horseshoes on purpose just to give you work. Your hands are sore. Your elbows are sandpaper. You haven't unclenched your jaw since breakfast. Someone asks for a decorative hinge, and you briefly consider throwing yourself into the forge just to avoid the conversation. Sometimes a neighbour stops by with a quick job. There's no such thing. It's always a bent blade from a hunting trip that looks like it lost a duel to a bear. Or a wagon wheel someone just needs patched that turns out to be cursed by geometry and made entirely of spite. You nod. You take the job. You add it to the invisible list that never ends. Sundown doesn't mean stop. Sundown means the light changes colour and the smoke gets harder to see through. You work by firelight now. Same tools. Same pain. Just less visibility and more tripping over buckets. Your fingers throb. Your back hums. You get a splinter in a place you didn't think could have splinters. You keep going. Dinner, if you can call it that, is warm ale and a piece of hard cheese the size of a regret. You sit in the doorway, not for comfort, there is none, but to cool off, to let the night air touch your sweat-soaked skin before your tunic finishes fusing with your spine. You chew slowly, partly because you're tired, partly because your jaw has decided it's done contributing today. You hear laughter in the distance, a neighbour's house, maybe a celebration. You look down at your hands. Filthy, cracked, strong. You think about all the things you've made with them. Then you think about how they hurt when you hold a cup too tightly. You mutter a curse at the sky, then stand up and sweep the floor because there's still coal dust in places. Coal dust should not be. Sleep is a complicated ritual. You lie down. Your muscles twitch. Your ears ring. Your hands tingle, like they're still hammering. You try to relax, but your brain replays every clang of the day like it's conducting a symphony of stress. You count how many rivets are due by morning instead of sheep. Eventually, you pass out, usually mid-thought, sometimes mid-sentence. Once, mid-sandwich. You dream of nothing, just fire and noise and someone asking if you can make it sturdier this time. You wake up before the sun, not because you're rested, but because the forge never really sleeps. It just waits for you to return. And so you do. You eat. You swing. You repeat. Because that's life now. And in this life, rest isn't earned. It's postponed. You push through the endless cycle of labour and lukewarm stew, and one day you realise your body is no longer yours. It belongs to the forge now. Let's talk about the physical cost of giving your life to fire and metal. Physical toll of the craft. Burns, injuries, irreversible change. Your body is not a temple. It's a battlefield. No, worse. It's the forge itself. A soot-stained, fire-bitten structure that creaks when it moves, smokes when it's working, and smells like it gave up trying to feel normal somewhere around the third burn and the fifth broken nail. You were born soft, smooth skin, nimble fingers, baby fat, a neck that could turn in both directions without sounding like it was chewing gravel. That version of you is dead now, probably buried under a pile of iron filings and back pain. Your hands are the first thing to go. They always are. What used to be fingers are now more like blunted tools. The joints don't bend the same way anymore. The nails are blackened, split, or just straight up missing. You've bled through more gloves than meals. Some of your knuckles are wider than your thumbs. A few of them even belong to you. Blisters, daily. Calluses, thicker than bread crust. Feeling? Optional. Burns come in categories. There's the quick sizzle, the damn, that's hot kind. Then the medium roast, where your skin bubbles slightly and smells like betrayal. And then the full branding, the kind that scars over in weird patterns that look like lost languages. You've been branded so many times you've stopped caring. One on the forearm shaped like a horseshoe. One on your thigh that looks like a demon's fingerprint. And your favourite, the one on your wrist that you got from trying to catch a falling chisel. You caught it. You learned. Some people have tattoos. You have injuries with stories. Your elbows are a constant ache. Your shoulders sound like they're filled with old parchment. You don't lift things. You negotiate with gravity. And your spine? Your spine has entered the bargaining phase of grief. It used to be straight. Now it bends slightly to the left, probably to avoid your growing resentment. You stand like a man who's fought 2 wars and 1 stubborn door hinge. Your posture could be described as collapse with dignity. Your knees crackle like old parchment every time you crouch. Your hips have started throwing tantrums. You dropped a nail once and just stared at it for 10 seconds, mentally calculating if picking it up was worth the potential betrayal of your entire lower half. Your feet have forgotten what soft ground feels like. They live in boots. Wet, hot, hard boots. All day, every day. You've stepped on more sharp things than a knight in battle. Once, you walked around for 4 hours with a nail embedded in your heel. You only noticed when you took your boot off and it stayed in. And through all this, the injuries, the aches, the unnatural angles, you're still expected to keep working. Because the forge doesn't care if you're limping. The metal doesn't wait for your wrist to feel better. That red-hot blade won't shape itself just because your back screamed and fell asleep halfway through a swing. You learn to adapt. Burn on your left hand? Use the right. Right wrist swollen? Grip differently. Dislocated thumb? Pop it back in. You've worked through cuts, sprains, twisted ankles, and one memorable week when you had a fever so high you hallucinated the anvil was whispering encouragement. It wasn't. The only time you stop working is when you physically can't stand up. And even then, you're expected to point at things and grunt instructions to someone younger, healthier, and just as doomed. Pain becomes background noise. It's always there, like the hiss of the forge or your father's disappointed breathing. You get so used to it that when it goes away, for even a moment, it feels wrong. Like something's missing. Like maybe you died and no one told you. You don't stretch. You snap. Every motion is followed by a sound. Pop, crack, groan, sigh, whimper. People think you're muttering incantations. You're not. You're just trying to lift a hammer without having your shoulder fall off. And your muscles? Thick, dense, functional. You're strong, yes, but not elegant strong, not knight strong, not show off at the village festival strong. More like, I can carry a full bucket of coal in each hand while screaming internally and trying not to drop my spine on the floor again. Strong. You're built like a tool. All function, no glamour. Your arms bulge. Your back is ropey. Your neck disappeared years ago, swallowed by layers of muscle, posture collapse, and permanent shoulder tension. You're 17, but move like you're 74. And let's talk about your hearing, or what's left of it. Years of hammering steel against steel in a room built to echo. You're lucky if you can hear someone whispering, unless they're shouting directly into your left ear. You nod a lot, not because you understand, because it's polite, and you hope it wasn't a question that requires follow-up. Smell? Permanent forge musk. Taste? Ash, salt, maybe bread. Vision? Slightly compromised, especially if there's smoke, or tears, or sweat in your eyes. So, always. You've inhaled enough coal dust to single-handedly start your own geological layer. Your lungs don't breathe so much as wheeze rhythmically in sync with your hammer swings. You once coughed up something that looked like a burnt spider. Might have been a piece of lung. Might have been breakfast. Doesn't matter. Sleep doesn't fix any of this. You lie down, and instead of rest, your body uses the time to file complaints with every muscle group. You wake up stiffer than when you went to bed. The straw mattress hasn't been fluffed since the last plague. Your blanket is damp. Your pillow is a balled-up shirt that smells like regret. And you keep going. Because you have to. Because there's no option. Because this is the life. Not a chapter of it. Not a phase. The life. The body you were born with was soft and gentle. The body you have now is forged, hammered, bent, broken, reheated, and reforged. You are the anvil. You get hit. You stay solid. You take the blows and hold your shape. There's pride in that. Twisted, bitter pride. The kind of pride that doesn't show up in poems, but keeps you standing when everything hurts. You don't need medals. You don't need praise. You just need your hands to work long enough to finish the blade, the nail, the job. Because that's what your body is now. Not just yours. It's a tool, and tools don't get rest. They get used, until they break. With a body forged in pain and smoke. What's next? A scent. One that clings to your skin, your clothes, your soul. The forge brands you with more than burns. It brands you with smell. Let's talk about how you became the human embodiment of burnt bacon and eternal despair. There's no polite way to say it. You smell like something that recently died and then decided to keep working. Your scent isn't just bad. It's a presence, a cloud, a moving wall of forged stink that announces you before you turn the corner. People don't see you first. They smell you. And then they wince. And then they pretend they didn't. The moment you became a blacksmith's apprentice, your clean, childlike smell evaporated. It was replaced overnight by a signature aroma. Part burnt leather, part sweat, part metal, and part a mystery component that seems to have fused with your actual soul. Soap is a myth. Baths are a quarterly hallucination, and nothing you own has ever been fully dry since spring. You work next to fire all day, literal fire, breathing in soot, ash, smoke, and the ghost of every cursed horseshoe that's ever betrayed you. Your tunic is a sponge for suffering. Your apron is a crime scene. Your boots might be growing a second ecosystem, one that could file for independence. The smell gets in your hair, and your scalp, and then your thoughts. You could scrub with sand and vinegar for an hour and still come out smelling like regret. You've tried. You've tried everything. Cold rivers, borrowed buckets, even once, in a moment of desperation, your mother's leftover lavender water. For 5 minutes, you smelled like spring. Then the forge laughed and rebaptized you in soot. You never win. Because it's not just the fire, it's the sweat. Endless, unrelenting, weaponized sweat. It starts as a trickle, becomes a flow, then evolves into something closer to a sentient waterfall. It soaks your clothes, your face, your underthings. It bakes into your skin, mixes with coal dust, turns into a black sludge that lives in the creases of your elbows and behind your knees like an unwelcome guest that's also on fire. You've sneezed black more times than you can count. Your tears run grey. Even your earwax smells like an abandoned forge. People avoid standing downwind of you, or upwind, or just near you. You've seen villagers cross the street when you approach. The tavern has a special table in the corner they always offer you, next to a cracked window and beneath the "Please Keep Open" sign. At first you were embarrassed. Now you consider it VIP treatment. You've learned to accept it, to own it. Someone's got to smell like molten iron and scorched wood and sadness, and that someone, unfortunately, is you. It's not your fault. You're a walking bonfire with muscles. Of course you stink. Your clothes haven't been properly washed in years. They've been rinsed, sure, splashed with water after a rainstorm or wiped with a damp rag after someone important shows up. But truly clean? That's a fantasy. Your tunic could be used to start fires just by folding it. You have one nice shirt. It's less stiff than the others and doesn't actively injure you when you put it on. You save it for festivals, funerals, and rare occasions when you need to look slightly less like a chimney that grew arms. The leather apron, meanwhile, has absorbed so much grease, ash, and smoke that it's legally a sentient being. You once left it near the fire overnight, and the next morning it had curled into a shape that looked vaguely threatening. You still wear it. What choice do you have? You smell like you sleep in a forge, because you do. The social consequences are noticeable. You don't get invited to things. No one says why. But they do it loudly, and in groups, usually while glancing at your clothes and trying not to inhale. There was a birthday feast once. You heard about it 3 days later from a guy you were shoeing a mule for. You'd have loved it, he said, then added, it was outdoors too, as if that somehow made it worse. Children point at you, not maliciously, just curious. They ask questions like, is that a person? And why does he steam? And what's that smell, Mama? Their mothers shush them quickly, but never deny it. You tried once to court someone. Once. You brought her a small iron brooch you made yourself. She smiled, took it, said thank you, and then stepped back like she'd just opened a crypt. She said something about allergies and strong scents and needing to breathe less aggressively. You got the message. Your father never talks about the smell, but he lives in it. He's stopped noticing, which is probably the final stage of the blacksmith transformation. Full olfactory surrender. His beard smells like firewood and rust. His breath could tarnish brass. Once, you walked into a barn and a goat fainted. No one blamed the goat. The priest avoids you. Not out of spite, just practical survival. Every time you come near, the incense curls in retreat like it's trying to escape your presence. During confession, you're asked to stand by the door, and even then, they open a second one halfway through. You start to miss the idea of smelling good. You vaguely remember lavender, fresh bread, soap made with actual herbs. You've even dreamed about it. In the dream, you reach out to touch a bar of soap, and it immediately bursts into flame and turns into a lump of iron. You wake up sweaty. Not from fear, just regular nightly forge sweat. Some villagers have started using you as a threat. Clean your room, or I'll make you work with the blacksmith. Do you want to smell like that? I said scrub, use both hands. Do you want to marry into that family? You've become a cautionary tale with muscles, but here's the twisted part. You're proud of it. You earned that stink. Every drop of sweat, every scorched tunic, every soot-streaked fingernail. It means you work. It means you create. You don't just sit in a room and wait for things to happen. You shape the world with your hands. And it smells exactly as hard as it is. The stink is proof that you're necessary, that you endure. So when people wrinkle their noses and step away, you just nod. Let them live their lavender-scented, dainty laundry lives. When their hinges break, or their gates collapse, you'll still be there. Arms folded, apron smoking, face shining with firelight and unapologetic odour. Because you don't wear cologne. You wear purpose. And sure, it smells like molten despair and regret-steamed wool. But at least it smells like something real. So now you're blistered, bent, and constantly 1 degree away from combustion. But hey, at least the entire village needs you. Constantly. Relentlessly. Without thanks. Let's dive into your real title. Human Utility System. Congratulations. You are officially the most important, least appreciated human in the village. You're not the Lord. You don't give orders. You don't wear shiny boots or own land or walk around stroking a decorative beard. But if you disappeared tomorrow, this entire place would fall apart faster than a cart with 3 wheels and a drunk ox. You are the blacksmith, which is basically medieval code for everyone's fixer, saviour, and designated problem sponge. Someone's gate won't close. You fix it. Hinge snapped. You fix it. Bucket handle broke. Fix. Wagon wheel exploded during market run because someone overloaded it with turnips in denial. Guess who's fixing that too? It's you. Always you. Never thanked. Just expected. People arrive mid-swing, mid-burn, mid-breakdown, holding something mangled in their hands and smiling like they're doing you a favour. I know you're busy, they say, but could you just take a quick look at this? The phrase, could you just, haunts you. You hear it in your sleep. You hear it in your bones. There is no quick job. There is no little fix. Everything is cracked, ancient, cursed, or somehow on fire. But they don't care. Because to them, you're not a person. You're a tool. With legs. They treat you like the forge never closes. And in fairness, it doesn't. Your forge is considered more reliable than the church. At least you're open 7 days a week and don't ask anyone to repent before you hammer their shovel back into usefulness. It's not just blacksmithing either. You've become the village's unofficial therapist, conflict mediator, and emotional dumping ground. People tell you things while you're fixing their knives. Things you didn't ask to know. Things you really shouldn't know while holding something sharp and hot. My husband won't touch me anymore. This door reminds me of my childhood trauma. I think my cow's possessed. You nod, pretend to listen, and hope the blade cools before you pass out from second-hand stress. Payment is a game of emotional roulette. Sometimes it's a handful of copper coins. Sometimes it's stale bread and a silent nod. Once it was a live chicken that promptly escaped and now lives under the bellows, screaming at you like a tiny feathery judge every morning. Your work is constant. Your reward? The knowledge that if you don't work, the village collapses. The knight gets glory. The priest gets respect. The baker gets fresh bread. You get a line of people who think urgent is a polite way to say inconvenient for you. And they all show up at the worst possible time. Dinner? Knock knock. Someone's horse just kicked a plough in half. Mid-shoeing? Knock knock. A bell broke, and suddenly the monastery can't function without a new one by sundown. Washing your hands for the first time in 3 days? Knock knock. A dagger snapped during a drunken tavern duel, and now someone's dignity depends on you forging a new one. You are not a tradesman. You are public infrastructure. They talk about you like you're part of the scenery. Where's the blacksmith? Oh, probably at the forge. Do you think he can fix this? Of course he can. He has to. And so you do. Because you've been trained since childhood to take what's broken, shape it back into form, and never, ever complain. Blacksmithing isn't just a craft. It's a role. One that eats your time, your body, your sense of self, and replaces it with a hammer and the ability to smile through pain. You've never been thanked properly, not once. They nod, they grunt, they say, "You're a lifesaver," while handing you a dented tool and walking away before you can ask for payment. If they do pay, it's usually in promises, or something even more offensive, exposure. Everyone's talking about your work. Great. Exposure doesn't feed you. You can't cook soup with compliments. Try boiling reputation sometime and see if it tastes like anything but ash. The worst part? They assume you're lucky. That working non-stop is some kind of privilege. That being needed means being appreciated. It doesn't. Being needed just means no one lets you rest. Appreciation would involve less shouting and more coin. Even when people do recognize your skill, it's framed as inevitability. Of course it's good. He's the blacksmith. They say it like you didn't bleed on the anvil 5 times trying to get that blade straight. Like your burned hands were just part of the magic trick. No one ever says, "That looks hard." They say, "You're good at that," like it was easy. You want to scream, but instead you swing. Because if you stop, the village stops. The entire community is held together by your hands, and they treat you like a reset button. Broken rake? Fix it. Bent gate? Fix it. Broken marriage? You're working on it. Leaking roof? That's not even your job. But they brought you nails, so apparently it is now. You start recognizing people not by their names, but by what they break. Oh, it's wagon wheel guy. Here comes I need it now woman. Ah yes, Mr. This is for my cousin but I can't pay you until harvest. Welcome back. And even when peace comes, it's worse. Because peace means no war. And no war means no orders for weapons, which means the steady flow of income dries up overnight. You go from forging swords to patching pots, from armour to cauldrons, from paid labour to could you just bend this back into shape and I'll bring you eggs next week. Spoiler, they never bring the eggs. But you keep working. You always do. Because it's not about glory, or thanks, or riches. You work, because if you don't, nothing else works. If you rest, the gate breaks. If you sleep, the cart falls apart. If you stop, the whole machine stutters and collapses into a pile of bent nails and whining customers. So you endure, quietly. And when the town praises anyone, it's the knight with the shiny new sword. The sword you made. The sword no one remembers you shaped with blistered hands and a forge that almost exploded that morning. But you remember, because you're not just the village blacksmith. You're the village tool, used daily, worn constantly, rarely replaced, but somehow, always ready. Even if no one ever says thank you. The village drains you dry, but every now and then, salvation arrives, covered in armour and looking for sharpened death sticks. War. It's terrible for peace, but amazing for business. Let's talk about the golden age of blacksmithing, when everyone was too busy dying to haggle. Peace is a beautiful thing, unless you're a blacksmith. Then it's a slow, quiet descent into malnourishment, unpaid bar tabs, and an existential crisis that smells like cold iron and watery soup. You're not supposed to say it aloud. Oh no, heavens forbid you root for a bit of action, but deep down, beneath the soot and the ankle pain, you're praying someone somewhere starts a fight big enough to dent something. Because when there's conflict, you're useful. And when you're useful, you eat. War is misery for the world. But for your forge, It's Christmas, your birthday, and tax forgiveness rolled into one. You'd never admit it publicly. That's dangerous talk. Wishing for battle while others pray for peace makes you sound like a villain. But you're not looking for conquest or carnage. You just want your forge hot, your coin purse jingling, and enough steel demand to justify using your last bit of decent charcoal before winter ruins everything. Because nothing fuels business quite like fear. Fear that your blade will snap, your armor won't hold, your axe won't cleave the other guy before his cleaves you. That kind of fear sends people to your doorstep with eyes wide and wallets open. As soon as someone declares a border dispute or some noble gets insulted at a feast, the whole rhythm of your world changes. The forge roars, the bellows scream, your hammer becomes a blur. You stop making household goods and start crafting needs. No one wants curtain rods. They want swords, halberds, arrowheads, armor buckles, reinforced horseshoes, blades that don't shatter when dreams do. And best of all, they pay for it. In coin. Real coin. Not onions, not goats, not exposure, or, "You're a good man. I'll get you back next week." Gold hits your hand. Silver clinks in your bucket. For a brief magical moment you feel rich. It doesn't last, of course, but while it does, your life feels almost bearable. There's pressure, sure, urgency, sleepless nights, but it's worth it. For once, the urgency is profitable. Knights arrive in full dramatic flair, dented armor, wild hair, and panic in their voices. They toss swords on your table like offerings to a god. "Fix this," they say. "Make it better. Faster. Sharper." They pay in advance. They say things like, "Whatever it costs." And you believe them. You believe them because they believe you are the difference between life and death. The forge burns brighter than ever. You barely sit. You barely eat. Your apprentice ages 5 years in 5 days. Your arms ache. Your back screams. Your fingers turn a colour iron isn't supposed to stain. But you're alive in a way you haven't been since the last regional conflict. You're needed. Your skills matter. And the smell of burning steel and fresh coin makes you feel something dangerously close to pride. There's meat on your table, ale in your cup, bread that wasn't baked 2 weeks ago. You can afford more charcoal. You fix your hammer's handle instead of wrapping it in sadness and string. You even catch yourself humming, briefly, before you remember who you are and punch a nail out of guilt. And then, peace. Suddenly, quietly, like a bard losing interest mid-verse. The Lord's Son makes a truce. The knights stop riding. The enemies retreat, or vanish, or apologize over wine. And just like that, the orders dry up. The swords are done. The spears don't need sharpening. The armor sits, polished and unused. You go from sculpting the tools of war to begging someone to need a plough fixed. At first you enjoy the silence, the stillness, a day without yelling. But then the cold sets in, not in the weather, in your wallet. The jobs stop coming. The coin stops clinking. You try to look busy shaping nails, but you're really just praying someone will need a blade before winter. You make cauldrons, door hinges, useless trinkets. No one pays for those. They barter, they haggle. They try to trade you chickens with trust issues, or the promise of eggs that never arrive. You miss the nights, their panic, their money, their desperation. They made you feel necessary. Now, even the carpenter is getting more attention. You, the man who forged survival, are back to fixing cracked wagon wheels and wondering if that leftover stew can be watered down one more time. You start fantasizing about battle. Not big battles, just a little one. Maybe a scuffle. A baron misplaces a sheep. A soldier slaps the wrong noble's cousin. Something light, casual, but with weapons. Weapons you make. Because without conflict, you are no longer essential. You are optional. And in this village, optional means unpaid. No one sees it, but peace starves you. Slowly. quietly. While the world celebrates, you ration. You whisper to your hammer like it's a friend who might leave you. You look at the armor hanging on the wall and wonder if you should melt it down into pots or just wear it and throw yourself into the next noble parade, shouting, "It's happening again!" You know it's coming. Some new threat. It always does. People can't go long without fighting. So you wait. You prepare. You clean the forge, count the coal, sharpen your tools. You keep making nails and pretending you don't care that no one needs a sword. But you do. You care. Because when the swords come back, so does everything else. The coin, the meat, the purpose, the fire in your eyes that isn't just reflection from the forge. And when the war drums sound again, when the first knight rides in shouting about bandits or border skirmishes, you won't say anything. You'll nod. Calm, professional. But deep down, your stomach will growl in anticipation, and the fire will burn hotter, and your hammer will feel lighter, because the blacksmith doesn't crave blood. He craves work. And war, as awful as it is, always delivers. So you hammer quietly, patiently, one nail at a time, waiting for the sound of marching boots and opportunity. Because peace may warm the heart, but it leaves the forge cold. But nothing good lasts forever. The blood dries up, the orders vanish, the coins stop clinking. And suddenly, you find yourself longing for the glory days of mass conflict. Welcome to peace, the most financially devastating thing that ever happened to you. They all cheered when the war ended, danced in the village square, sang songs, hugged strangers, lit candles. You? You stared at your forge like it had just delivered a terminal diagnosis. Because when the soldiers went home and the knights stopped breaking swords, so did your only reliable income. The war didn't just end. It left. Quietly. Like a customer who eats half the meal and then says, "Oops, forgot my coin pouch." Peace is wonderful. If you don't rely on conflict to afford bread, you wake up to silence, not the peaceful kind, the kind that feels like your forge is holding its breath. There are no frantic hoofbeats, no loud banging on your door, no shouting about deadlines and urgent repairs. Just you, your half-burned breakfast bread, and the growing realization that nobody's coming today, or tomorrow, or possibly ever again, unless someone's wagon wheel explodes from shame. During war, you were a legend, a hero with hammer and flame. They lined up for your work, paid in silver, waited their turn, nodded respectfully. Now they show up holding a rusty rake and asking if you'll fix it for the good of the village. Translation, for free, or worse, for a promise. I'll owe you one. They already do. You're owed hundreds of ones. There's no demand for swords anymore. Spears sit untouched. Arrowheads collect dust. The armor you worked so hard to shape now hangs from wooden pegs like metallic shame coats. You eye it like a hungry man looks at furniture. Technically, you could melt it down into something someone might buy, like a soup pot, or 12,000 nails, or a single oversized spoon for a very ambitious stew. Your coin pouch is so empty it echoes. You shake it and it coughs. You flip it inside out just to remember what silver used to look like. You count your coppers 3 times a day, like they're going to multiply out of pity. They don't. They just look back at you like, "Hey, remember war? That was nice." You start accepting anything as payment. Eggs, root vegetables, socks. One woman handed you a lump of wool and said, "It's freshly sheared. That's worth something." You nodded and tucked it away like it was a gift from the gods. You later used it to plug a hole in your roof. Probably not what she meant. Every job is now a negotiation, not just over price, over reality. They bring you things that are dead. Objects that should have been buried years ago. Shovels broken in 3 places. Door hinges that dissolved in rust. Ploughheads so bent they resemble a tortured snake. Can you just fix it up real quick? They ask, cheerfully. Sure. Right after I invent time travel and undo whatever unholy crimes were committed against this tool, you become a salesman against your will, pitching things no one wants. This is a very sturdy horseshoe. Why would I need that? Well, you might go somewhere. Fast. In a straight line. They blink. You sweat. The barter begins. They try to trade you information. Did you hear the miller's wife ran off with the monk? That's fascinating. Can I eat that? No, but I thought you'd like to know. Great. I'll tell my stomach to settle down. We've got gossip now. The slow days pile up like coal you can't afford to burn. You start cleaning the forge just to feel busy. You oil your tools. You sweep the ashes. You talk to your hammer. You give your tongs a name. You walk in circles pretending to check supplies, which is code for staring into the void for 20 minutes and trying not to scream. Peace doesn't just hit your wallet, it hits your pride. During the war, you were indispensable. People bowed to your skill. Now they question your prices. Why is it so much? They ask about a new hinge. It's just metal. Yes. Shaped, hammered, measured metal. Forged by a man who hasn't slept properly in months, and whose back sounds like a drawer full of forks every time he stands. You begin to miss war. Not the blood, not the death, just the urgency, the respect, the rhythm of swing, sweat, coin. You'd settle for a bar fight that escalates into something serious, or a noble's carriage breaking an axle in enemy territory. Anything that ends with someone screaming, "We need weapons," and throwing gold in your direction like you're the last hope of civilization. Instead, you get quiet desperation. You fix a soup ladle for half a beat. You reforge a rusted scythe blade and get paid with a thank you and a single sock. The sock doesn't match anything. It might not even be clean. But you smile. You nod. You pretend it's enough. It's never enough. You start dreaming of conquest. Not you doing the conquering, just being near it, adjacent to chaos. A war-adjacent profession. That's what you are. A man with a fire and no fuel. A hammer and nothing to strike. You begin considering sabotage. Oops! Did I loosen that cartwheel? Oh no, it broke near the border. How strange. What's that? You need 12 spears by tomorrow? Well, if you insist. You don't go through with it, of course. You have honour. Probably. Somewhere under the hunger and resentment. But you think about it. You think about it every time someone haggles you down to a half loaf of stale bread and says, "This'll get you through the week, right?" You nod, and chew, and cry a little in your soul. The worst part of peace is how fast they forget you. During war, your name echoed through the village. "Where's the blacksmith? Get the blacksmith! He'll know what to do!" Now it's, "Oh, I didn't know you were still open." Still open? I never closed. I never got to. I am the reason your door opens, your gate swings, your wheel turns. And now you can't be bothered to remember my name. Peace is cruel. It doesn't kill you quickly. It starves you politely. It shakes your hand while it empties your forge. It smiles while you pawn your tools. It thanks the gods for quiet while your stomach plays percussion. It blesses the land while you curse the sky, the silence, and the slow rot of usefulness. You sit beside your cold forge, staring at your reflection in a warped shield no one wanted. You look older, tired, soot-streaked and forgotten. You used to be a craftsman. Now you're a placeholder, a man-shaped memory of necessity. But you endure, because someone has to. Because one day the peace will shatter again. It always does. It's the nature of people, of kingdoms, of cows wandering into the wrong field. And when it happens, they'll come running again. Back to your door, desperate, scared, holding bent blades and broken pride. And you'll light the forge, pick up the hammer, feed the fire, and pretend, for their sake, that you weren't waiting for it all along. Because peace may be the dream, but for a blacksmith, it's also the famine. In peacetime, they stop needing weapons, but they never stop needing you. Every tool still breaks, every door still jams, every customer still interrupts you mid-bite. So what's the difference between work and life? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. There is no work-life balance. That's a fantasy, a tale told by bards with soft hands and sleep schedules. For you, there's only life, and life is work. Unpaid, unplanned, and interrupted constantly by people who don't knock and don't understand that chewing doesn't mean available. They show up mid-bite, mid-blister, mid-breakdown, holding broken things and hopeful expressions, and they always say the same cursed phrase, "Sorry to bother, but I just need a quick favour." And then you die inside. Just a little, but consistently. The forge never sleeps, and neither do you. Not really. You nap like a startled raccoon, short bursts, half alert, surrounded by half-cooked meals, and the faint knowledge that at any second, someone's going to shout your name because their fence hinge squeaks like it personally insulted them. You don't plan your days happen at you. You wake up to smoke and noise, you stumble toward your tools, and you hammer until your arms revolt, or someone pulls you away to fix something else that should have been replaced 2 years ago, but somehow survived purely through your suffering. You can't escape it. Not for a moment. You've tried. You once walked to the edge of the village for a breath of fresh air, and 3 minutes later someone ran after you holding a broken sickle and shouting, "Thank goodness I caught you." You weren't hiding. You were just breathing. That's not allowed. Mealtime is a cruel joke. You eat standing up, one hand holding tongs, the other trying to protect your food from flying ash and mid-task visitors. You chew while you hammer. You chew while you yell. You've trained yourself to swallow without tasting, because the moment you actually sit down, someone walks in with a bent nail and a full sense of entitlement. You've forgotten what warm food tastes like. Every meal is lukewarm at best, and usually ash-seasoned. You once found an actual iron shaving in your bread. You kept eating. You've bitten through worse. You've bitten through metal. Your molars have PTSD. Even soup isn't safe. You've had to abandon it too many times mid-ladle because a knight's boot decided to disintegrate right as you were about to taste something vaguely edible. There are no breaks, just gaps between disasters. No holidays, no rest days, no just one day off. The forge doesn't take days off, neither does everyone else's poor decision-making. You are the final stop in the village's bad luck parade. Every loose hinge, snapped tool, bent gate, and cracked axe head finds its way to you. Always you, never anyone else. You are the village's living warranty. You don't have hours. You have availability. Permanent, universal, unspoken. They show up at dawn. They show up at midnight. They knock politely while you're mid-bath, once a month, if lucky. They peek into your shed while you're sleeping next to the anvil, asking, "Are you busy?" No? Of course not. I just nap here in my soot-covered apron for fun. Even when you try to create boundaries, they ignore them. You once nailed a sign to the forge that said, "Closed." Someone walked in, held it up and said, "Is this a joke?" Yes. The joke is my life. The jobs pile up, and they don't respect the order. You're halfway through reforging a cracked blade when someone barges in shouting about their ox cart wheel exploding. You drop everything. Fix the wheel. Go back to the blade. Then someone shows up needing a nail but a fancy one. You make the nail, burn your hand, curse the gods, go back to the blade. Only now it's cooled too much and you have to start again. And so the cycle continues. Ad infinitum. Ad breakdownium. Even your dreams are jobs. You dream of bellows and hammers, of people lining up outside your forge holding broken things and saying, "Just one more quick job." You wake up mid-swing, sweat-soaked and twitching. You've had more arguments in your sleep than in real life. Your subconscious is a blacksmith too. It hates its job. You have no hobbies. What would they be? Whittling? You already shape things all day. Gardening? You've got calluses so thick you can't feel dirt. Reading? Your eyes blur from the smoke before you can even make out a page. Music? The last time someone asked if you played an instrument, you handed them a pair of tongs and said, "Yes," the screaming metal clapper of burned fingers. The idea of free time becomes absurd. What would you do with it? Sit still? Unthinkable. Your body starts aching if you don't move. Your brain panics without a deadline looming. You once had an entire afternoon with no orders, and you spent it reorganizing your iron scrap pile alphabetically by emotional damage. You named them. You cried a little. Then someone walked in with a bent rake and the fantasy ended. Your family barely sees you, if you have one. If not, your tools are your family. Your hammer is your sibling. The tongs are your reluctant spouse. The anvil is your emotional support parent, cold, heavy, and unmovable. You whisper to them. They never whisper back, but they understand. Your customers think you love this. They say things like, "You're so lucky, doing what you love." You smile politely while wondering how long it would take to hammer their shoes into decorative door hinges. Love? You love not starving. You love not freezing. You love not being screamed at by a man who shattered his shovel because he mistook a rock for a mole. You keep a list, a mental one, of everyone who said, "It'll only take a second," right before handing you a task that required 3 hours, 4 apologies, and 6 splinters. The baker, the cooper, that noble's cousin who thinks a forge is a suggestion and not a death furnace. They all make the list. You never say anything, but you know. You once tried to say no, just once. You said, "I can't take another job today." The villager stared at you like you'd just announced you were joining the raiders. "But I need it by sunset." You said no again. They left. Came back 10 minutes later with a pie and an apology. You accepted the pie and the job. And so the cycle begins anew. You have aged out of rest. It's a young man's fantasy. Now you just power down, like a machine, like a bellows left open. You slump in your chair, hands limp, brain melting, until someone knocks, and then you rise, automatically. Not because you want to, but because that's who you are now, the living machine. Work-life balance? No. Just work-life blur. It all melts together. The hammer swings. The iron glows. The villagers beg. You respond, over and over, until you're dust, until you're ash, until they nail your name above the forge and throw your hammer to the next poor soul. Because breaks are for bones, not blacksmiths. You never got a break, and you won't now. But maybe, just maybe, your kid can lighten the load, or inherit it completely. Let's talk about raising the next victim. Sorry, apprentice, in this grand, scalding tradition. It starts small. He's maybe 6, still has round cheeks, still runs like his legs haven't realised they'll soon be carrying metal instead of dreams. You don't even have to tell him. It's already happening. He watches you swing the hammer. He mimics your stance with a stick. He squints at the forge like he's trying to see the future through fire. And, in a way, he is. Because you are the future. You, and the aching limbs, and the permanently dirty tunic, and the cough that's lasted since harvest. Congratulations. Your son wants to grow up into a backache with a name. You don't plan to drag him in. Not really. You tell yourself you'll wait until he's older, stronger, ready. That you'll protect him from the worst of it. But then one day he wanders into the forge barefoot, picks up a tong longer than his arm, and asks what it's for. And you say, "Hold it tight." That's all it takes. Childhood officially ends at the sentence, "Don't flinch." From then on, he's your shadow. He learns the rhythm of the bellows before he learns his own handwriting. He knows how to sweep ash and sort nails before he knows how to swim. While other children are chasing chickens, he's dodging sparks. His hands grow calluses before they learn to properly hold a spoon. This is your legacy. Fireproof children. He doesn't complain at first, not because he enjoys it, but because it doesn't occur to him that he's allowed to dislike anything. You didn't like it either. You still don't. That's not the point. This is the job, the work, the weight that must be carried by someone. And since you're carrying it now, you know exactly who's going to carry it next. You train him gently. At first, you correct his grip. You show him the difference between warm and too warm. You point out which parts of the floor will betray him when the coals spill. And when he burns himself, you don't say poor thing. You say, now you know. Because it's not cruelty, it's preparation. You teach him by showing, by doing, by grunting, pointing, glaring. Words are few, lessons are constant. Use both hands. Pump slower. No, not that way. Watch the colour, not the flame. If you drop that, don't cry. Just move fast so it doesn't kill you. He nods, absorbs, gets quieter, and that's how you know it's working. Soon he anticipates your needs. He passes the hammer before you ask. He knows when the fire's too low. He knows your sighs, your silences, your sharp exhale when the tongs slip. It's strange, watching yourself unfold in smaller form, like someone pressed your soul into new flesh, but forgot to clean it first. He stops playing. Not abruptly. It's just that toys start to feel like a waste of time. Why pretend to swing a sword when you're already making one? Why chase imaginary monsters when real ones wear armor and demand fresh arrowheads by noon? He stops running too. He walks like you now, shoulders tense, steps careful, always slightly braced for something to go wrong. His voice changes, not from age but from smoke. He starts to sound older than he is. You once heard him mutter, "Damn it," when a nail bent wrong. You didn't correct him, you just nodded. Good. Language of the trade. Sometimes you see him pause, look longingly out the doorway, watch the other boys toss stones, laugh, vanish toward the fields. And for a split second, you feel guilt. Sharp, uncomfortable. Like a splinter you won't pull because it's already buried too deep. But then, a blade cracks, or the fire dies, or a night arrives with something stupidly urgent, and there's no time for guilt. There's only the work. You hand your son a file and say, "Back to it." He doesn't argue. He never does. He already understands. The forge isn't a job. It's a need. And if you don't feed it, it consumes you. You try to give him small joys. A dried fig when coin is good. A story by the fire when your hands aren't shaking. Once, you took him to the market and let him pick a wooden trinket from the toy stall. He clutched it like treasure for a week, then carved it into a handle for a knife he made himself. You weren't sure whether to be proud or horrified, so you settled for both. You teach him everything, not just how to shape iron, but how to handle people, how to stay quiet when the noble insults your work, how to nod when the customer underpays you and walks away smiling, how to keep your anger in your stomach, your sadness in your teeth, and your reputation nailed firmly to the doorframe. There are moments, rare, fleeting, where you almost feel hope, when he makes a clean weld, when he doesn't flinch at the hiss of quenching steel, when he catches a dropped tool with the speed of someone who knows what falling metal can do. He's getting good. Too good. You remember what it cost to get that good, and you wonder, is this a gift or a curse? You've become your father. It happened slowly, one day at a time, a grunt here, a snapped command there, and now you hear his voice in yours. You say the same things. You hold the same stance. You wear the same permanent scowl carved from soot and fatigue. You used to fear him. Now you understand him. Your son will understand you too. Someday. He already knows the weight of the hammer. Soon he'll know the weight of responsibility, of days that stretch too long, of nights that end too early, of coins that never come fast enough and meals that never stay hot. He'll inherit your muscles, your burns, your silence, your expectations. But maybe he'll also inherit your stubbornness, your resilience, the way you keep going, even when everything aches, the way you find beauty in a well-made blade, the way you line up your tools at night, tired but not defeated. You're not raising a boy, you're shaping a future. And the forge is your cradle, your classroom, your church. It baptizes him in smoke, confirmed by callus, ordained in the gospel of iron and sweat. One day, your hands will give out. The burns won't heal right. Your grip will tremble. The hammer will feel like a boulder. And your son, your quiet, soot-faced, sharp-eyed apprentice, will step forward, pick it up, swing it clean. Not because you told him to, but because he's ready. You won't need to say anything. He'll nod. You'll nod. That's how blacksmiths say, "I love you." Because this is your legacy. Not glory, not wealth, but continuity. Fire passed to fire, scar to scar, a chain unbroken. You gave your life to the forge, and now, gently, lovingly, you're giving his too. Your sun begins to rise, which means you begin to fall. Your hands fail, your knees betray you. The hammer feels heavier every day. Let's talk about the slow collapse of a man built to endure, but not forever. You don't notice it all at once. The decline is slow, sneaky, polite at first. A dull ache here, a joint that takes an extra second to wake up, a stiffness in your back that no stretch seems to solve. You tell yourself it's just a long week, a cold morning, a heavier hammer. You lie to yourself because you have to. Because if you ever stopped long enough to admit the truth, that your body is falling apart, you might never get back up. You've spent a lifetime forging steel, and now your bones are trying to return the favour by becoming iron themselves. Your knees creak like old door hinges. Your shoulders click like a poorly built ratchet. Every step sounds like someone shuffling through a sack of broken cutlery. You wake up groaning. You fall asleep groaning. You make noises getting into a chair, and worse ones trying to get out. Your hands, once strong and nimble, are now clawed relics of past glory. The knuckles bulge. The fingers tremble. Your grip strength is still there. Sort of. But it's no longer reliable. Some mornings you hold your hammer like a seasoned warrior. Other mornings, it falls to the floor, and you stare at it like it betrayed you. You used to catch falling tongs mid-air. Now you just hope they don't land on your foot, because you know it'll take you 10 minutes to pick them up. Your back is a horror story, written in muscle spasms and compressed discs. You haven't stood up straight in a decade. If you try, something pops. If you don't, something else aches. You used to be able to lift anvils with a grunt. Now you lift a bucket and feel it echo in your spine like a church bell tolling your funeral in advance. Your belt doesn't hold your tools anymore. It holds your ribs together. Your eyes aren't what they were either. You squint at red-hot metal like it's a riddle. You start confusing glowing iron with warm bread. You've accidentally grabbed the wrong end of a chisel more than once. Your apprentice laughs. You pretend it's funny. Later, you wipe your hand with vinegar and try not to scream. You have a permanent limp. No one remembers how it started. Maybe it was the time you dropped a horseshoe on your foot. Or that day the ox cart tilted and you tried to be a hero. Or maybe your body just picked a leg and decided to punish it forever. It doesn't matter. What matters is you now walk like a man who fought a small war with gravity and lost. Your lungs, those poor betrayed bellows, wheeze like an old chimney. You breathe in soot and cough up regret. Smoke has seasoned your voice into something between gravel and a wet cough. You used to shout orders. Now you rasp them. Your apprentice sometimes leans in and says, "What?" And you just wave a hand, because repeating yourself hurts your soul. Sleep is no longer rest. It's horizontal pain. You lie down, and every muscle sighs in protest. Your legs twitch. Your hands throb. Your shoulders pinch. You dream of work, not metaphorically, but literally. In your dreams, you're still hammering, still swinging, still trying to finish that one damn gate latch that refuses to line up. You wake up more exhausted than when you went to bed. You're always sore, always. You can't remember a day when something didn't hurt. You've named your aches. The left shoulder is Old Faithful. The right knee is the betrayer. Your lower back is just why. You stopped mentioning pain years ago because it became obvious no one was going to fix it, including you. You start forgetting things, not big things, not names or faces, just little things. Where you put your file, whether you already sharpened the blade, if you actually finished that job or just imagined it during your standing nap. The apprentice notices. You pretend you don't. He finishes tasks you didn't realize you forgot. He doesn't say anything. That's how you know he cares. Your clothes don't fit like they used to. Not because you've gained weight, more like you've redistributed misery. Your chest sinks. Your belly sags. Your arms are still thick, but now the muscle comes with complaints. Your apron smells more like age than fire. You wash it, but the scent is permanent, like the forge tattooed itself into your skin. People still come to you, still ask for work. But now, they sometimes ask your son first. They glance at you as they talk to him. Not out of disrespect, just habit. They know who does the real swinging now. You've become the voice, not the hands, the brain, not the muscle. And slowly, quietly, that becomes your role. You sit more, watch more, point instead of do. You say things like, tap, don't slam, and that's too hot, you'll warp it. You hold a mug you can barely lift, and you squint through the smoke at your son's form, analysing, critiquing, guiding. You can't do it all anymore, but you can still see what needs doing, and that matters. You tell yourself that matters. Some days you try to prove you've still got it. You swing the hammer just to show him. You grit through the pain. You finish a task, jaw clenched, vision blurred. He claps. You smile. Then you disappear behind the forge and nearly black out from the effort. You don't let him see. He doesn't need to see. Not yet. You've started keeping track of the years, not because you expect to hit a record, just because you're curious. Most blacksmiths don't last this long. They break, they fade, they vanish into the dust of their own unrelenting work. You've outlived some of them. You feel guilty about that. You feel lucky about that. And tired. Mostly tired. You don't want to stop. That's the cruel part. You love this. The rhythm, the noise, the moment the metal bends just right, the feel of a blade done well, the nod of a satisfied customer, even if they never say thank you. You don't want to leave it behind, but your body is leaving you, piece by piece, so you adapt. You focus on teaching, passing it down, preserving the craft. You become the memory of the forge, still hot, but flickering. Still vital, but slower. You are not useless. Not yet. You still matter. Even if you can't swing like you used to, even if every motion hurts, even if the hammer now feels more like a farewell than a greeting. One day you'll stop. The body will demand it. The forge will go on, without you, because that's how it works. But until then, you show up. You sit beside the flame. You grip your mug like a weapon. You teach. You remember. You endure. You don't go out in a blaze of glory. No one does. You go out with a whisper, a sigh, a slow, final exhale that smells like smoke and earned rest. Because the hammer always outlasts the hand that held it. And you knew that from the start. And when your arms can't lift, and your lungs wheeze like dying bellows, the question remains, what was it all for? No songs, no cheers, but everything still works. Let's close this out by looking at the quiet, enduring legacy of someone who was never celebrated, but was always necessary. There will be no ballads. No bard will sing your name over ale-stained tables while drunks raise mugs and toast your glorious deeds. No painted scrolls, no statues, no village festivals in your honour. You won't be written into the tales of knights or kings. There will be no chorus, no golden plaque, no epic saga that begins, "There once was a blacksmith who," because there never is. Your story ends in silence. And yet, somehow, everything still runs because of you. The world forgets the ones who hold it together. That's the deal. It praises the swords, but not the hands that forged them. It applauds the gates, but not the man who shaped their hinges. It marvels at castles and fortresses and wheels that carry armies to glory, and never once pauses to wonder, who made the nails, the rivets, the iron beneath the armour? You did. But no one ever says your name. And that's okay, mostly, because you didn't do it for glory. You did it because someone had to. Because things break. Because someone needs to know how to shape the world back into usefulness. Because a house doesn't stay up with prayers and wishes. It stays up with brackets and braces. Because when the knight's sword shatters and the gate won't close, and the ox cart collapses in the mud, they all turn to you. Not for poetry, for results. They won't remember your face, but they'll keep using what your hands made long after you're gone. The latch on the granary, the hinges on the town hall, the horseshoe on the merchant's best mare. Quiet things, functional things, unremarkable until they fail. And then, suddenly, everyone remembers that the world depends on details, and that some tired, smoke-soaked soul had to make them all, by hand, one after the other. Your forge will outlive you, not in ceremony, in practice. It will keep burning under someone else's care. Your son, maybe, or your apprentice, or someone else entirely. But it will burn, because the world still needs iron bent into shape, and that need is eternal. It doesn't matter if the names change. The fire is the same. The rhythm continues. You will fade slowly. At first, they'll still nod when they pass you. "The old blacksmith," they'll whisper. "Tough one." Then the whispers stop. Then they stop calling you anything at all. Your work speaks louder anyway. The handles, the hinges, the horseshoes. Every working piece of this village has your fingerprints somewhere on it, even if no one looks that closely. There will be a day when you're gone, and they won't notice, not right away. But then something will break, something old, something reliable. And they'll say, "Didn't the blacksmith make that?" And for a moment, a flicker of memory will drift through the smoke. A face, a figure, a pair of hands, scarred and steady. They won't remember what you said, but they'll remember what you built. That is your legacy. Not noise, not applause. Structure. The floor that holds the grain. The bell that calls the monks. The rake that tills the soil for food no one thanks you for. These are your monuments. These are your statues. Quiet, useful, everywhere. There is no glory in a nail, but there is necessity. And you made thousands of them. Your son will carry on. He won't be perfect. He'll forget some things. He'll learn others. He'll curse the work the way you did. But he'll swing the hammer. He'll keep the fire alive. He'll answer the knock at the door when the villagers come with their cracked tools and crooked faces. He'll mutter under his breath and get to work. And when they say, "You're just like your father," he'll pretend to be annoyed. But deep down, he'll be proud. Because he knows what it meant, what it cost, what it built. And one day, he'll pass it on too. The hammer, the tongs, the way the forge creaks just before a storm. The exact colour iron glows when it's ready to shape. The difference between hot enough and run. He'll teach someone new. A son, a daughter, a stray who wandered in and stayed. And they'll begin again, because the forge doesn't end. It just trades hands. You won't get a gravestone, just a plank maybe, with your name carved shallow and uneven. But that's fine. Because every clang of iron is still you. Every spark, every hiss, every perfect bend. You are echoes now. You are the rhythm beneath the noise of the village. You are the pulse in its walls. And that will last longer than any song. Because you didn't chase glory. You built it. You were never knighted. But you armed the knights. You were never crowned. But you shaped the crown's hinges. You didn't harvest the fields. But you fixed the plough. You didn't teach in the chapel. But you forged the bell that called them in. And you didn't ride into history. You held the horseshoes that let others gallop through it. So no, there will be no songs. But the world turns on your work. And that is enough. Because you were the blacksmith. And in a world full of voices, you were the silence that made everything function. Thanks for watching. If this plague-ridden tale gave you chills, laughs, or the sudden urge to wash your hands with holy water, I'm glad. Drop a comment with your favourite symptom. Or just say, I would not have made it past day one. More grim, gross, and historically accurate misery awaits on the left. See you in the next descent into doom.